Who the fuck is Judi Thomas? I'm Judi Thomas, also known as Judi Doodlecat. I'm a fine artist and event producer and promoter. I moved to Brighton at the end of my marriage, and I just found that the level of energy of everybody that I was meeting in Brighton, there was nobody who was ashamed to call themselves an artist. There was none of that justification of having a real job or anything like that. I had no formal art training, but I guess being an artist was something that was one of my earliest aspirations as a young person. And I grew up in South Africa. We didn't get exposed to contemporary popular culture. Any of the most decent artists boycotted us. So my early influences were people like Dali and Warhol, and sort of people who were out there and edgy, but not political in a sort of race way that could be interpreted by the government as being controversial. I'm a white South African, so I've had to learn in the same way that I learned about cis privilege. I've had to learn about my white privilege, and I've had to learn that, for example, the first artwork I ever sold was nothing but cultural appropriation. I try to allow myself to be challenged on my artwork and also on my political opinions. Politics is just the air that you breathe. I don't believe that politics is something you can choose to do or not do. It's happening to you all the time, and I've never, since the age of 17, been able to forget that all of the time that politics is happening and I'm not paying attention to it, it's being done to me. I've worn a lot of labels all my life. She was the first time that I let myself just draw without a time limit, without anybody looking over my shoulder, without anybody's comment on whether or not they thought what I was drawing was worthy or whether I was succeeding or failing or whatever. And I realised that actually I've not allowed myself the guilt-free time to finish something. And so it was never possible for me to put time into artwork without also putting guilt into artwork. And I think guilt has become a big theme. Guilt, shame, and all of those things have become themes in my work. But I think in this mermaid you can see, I think it encapsulates for the first time not just a serenity, but a kind of serene confidence. I do a lot of erotic art where it is quite sexualized, but where I'm trying to explore ideas around the shaming of female body parts, for example. I've had my artwork banned from Facebook, I've had my drawings banned by Amazon, and all I'm drawing is unashamed women. I'm drawing women alone exploring their bodies non-sexually, and it still triggers the patriarchy in such a way that Amazon will ban my colouring book for being too rude. A lot of the women that I draw as well, I've kind of thought of it as like inner self portraits, so they don't look like me. But when I look at the artworks, they're referring to me. This one was kind of more of a fuck you and it's a lot more light-hearted. It's a self-portrait. This is me having a fertile imagination. Mediocre artists copy, great artists steal. And either Salvador Dali said that and Andy Warhol stole it from him. Poor Andy Warhol said it, I'm not quite sure. But I like that idea. I think I am a sponge. And so it's quite possible that I've scrolled by or seen something, because that's how it happens to me. It'll just hit me, and then 2 days later I'll find myself drawing something, and I'll go, alright, this is where it comes from. If you're completely fixated on one path and one way of doing something, that will be really debilitating and it will knock you, and that used to happen to me a lot. The inability to create then perfectly just made me think that I was failing. That bit of art feels like I get to exert all of that control without doing anything harmful to myself. So these appear to be very much in control, mostly they aren't, and that I think is a life lesson. Sometimes it's actually really pedestrian what causes me to make an artwork. It's really not deep or meaningful. It doesn't mean the artwork isn't beautiful, and it doesn't mean that when somebody else looks at that artwork that they're not going to have a reaction to it. It's not going to suddenly mean something because they know an artist made it. I personally believe that there's an artist in every single one of us. The question is whether or not you have the courage to stand next to the mess that you made and say, this is art, fight me.